The Old Testament reading for the fifth Sunday in Lent is a very familiar passage. It comes from Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel is taken to this valley, and across this valley are strewn these dry bones that are brittle and broken and all apart. And God says, prophesy to these bones and see what happens. And we know how the story ends. The bones actually come together and they form again and they're restored to life. God takes something that is completely broken, completely dried up, completely waste, and make something beautiful and usable and purposeful again from it. And it was a reminder for the people of Israel who were in exile in Babylon at the time, that God had not forgotten about them, that God was already at work doing something to bring them back to life and restore them back to Jerusalem and the temple, and being able to be a part of worship in that way. What a great passage for us in this day, that A, God has not forgotten about us, and B, God is already at work in a time and place in the future that we will see God's work and see God's restoration. Until then, let's not forget that God had been working in Ezekiel's life for quite some time. God had been preparing the people and preparing them to be ready to return to Jerusalem and to the temple worship. God had been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. Sometimes we refer to that as prevenient grace in the Wesleyan tradition. It's the things that God does all around us that we don't even see until it's all said and done. And then all of a sudden we're like, wow, we didn't realize that God had been working that way and preparing us and preparing everyone else for a time of restoration. I believe that's what's happening now. And God very well may be using this time, not having caused it. I'm going to keep saying that because that's not what God does. But God does redeem our times of waiting and redeems our time of trial by helping shape us. And there may be things that God wants to do in our lives personally, so that when the time comes that things are different and restored and we're free to move about the country, that we're a different people and we're more ready to love God and to love one another. We're more ready to serve our neighbor and more ready to be God's people in God's places.